the crooked little fingers to everybody else. Spend all the time feeling sorry for themselves. Victim of this, victim of that. Your mama's too thin and your daddy's too fat. Get over it. Get over it. All this whining and crying, did you fit? Get over it. Get over it.
All right.
Well, get over it, right? Get over it. Well, welcome to, today is July 15th, Friday. It's 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And my partner here is Lloyd Lofton with Power Behind the Sales. And of course, my name is Dan Vignal with WebPres Videos. Today, we're going to talk about the 9.1% CPI which came out this week, indicative of the rate of inflation on consumer prices, and how we can use this topic that's in the media, so prevalent in the media, and everybody's talking about these implications, and how we can use those to start conversations with our clients, prospects, any leads that we have, and get those to develop into sales opportunities. Lloyd, yeah, as I said, everybody's talking about this. So what sort of questions can we use to initiate a dialogue with a client or a prospect that will get them, opening up, talking about how inflation is impacting their retirement, impacting their lifestyle, impacting their business, and then how do you develop those questions into a sales opportunity?
Well, first of all, I hope you had a good week. I'm looking forward to this conversation today. I was excited about all the news that came out. I was excited about the retail price going up 1.1% from last month. I was excited about the CPI. I know people think it's really strange when I say I was excited about it because I think this is great marketing messaging. There's also a chart out there that shows inflation from January 2021 till now, and it shows the graph where it went up precipitously, and I think that should be in every email marketing that people put out there. But before we talk about what those questions are, I do think it's important to understand the psychology of people, and that is that people buy on emotion and they're moved to action by logic. Even people, and agents say this to me all the time, but when I do live events, agents will raise their hand and you see them shaking their head no. Well, I don't buy that. I buy logically. And then I walk them through it. It's fun asking the questions. I walk them through the process. So when you say you buy logically, what do you mean you buy logically? Well, I buy logically because I figure out this and I figure out that, and I ask questions. I want to know this, that, and the other. Well, what happens if you feel like the person lied to you or the information you got wasn't accurate? Well, I get upset. I get mad about it. And then is that upset or is that mad? Is that an emotion or is that logic? And you can see the look on their faces like, damn, you're confident.
Yeah.
I think so. The reason you buy logically is because of how it makes you feel, right? So people buy on emotion, but they're moved to action by logic. That's just normal human behavior. And I know that's easier to say that than it is to do it. But you in this business, if you're in this business, you are a business person. If you see yourself as a salesman, then you're going to have a salesman's income. If you think your job is to educate your prospect, then you're going to have a school teacher's salary. If you think that your job is to diagnose a problem they have without prescribing the solution, then you're going to be the lawn company that comes out and give estimates. You have to be tough in this business. So I'm going to give you some hard questions. We'll talk about some hard questions. But here's the hardest part about hard questions, at least in my experience. We were talking about this before the show. In my experience, most agents and most advisors have trouble asking hard questions for two reasons. Either they don't have the confidence to ask the question, or they're not willing to let the awkward pause go by long enough for their prospect to be uncomfortable enough to come up with an honest answer. So they feel the need, the agent or advisor feels the need to rescue the prospect. And what you have to do is you have to be able to ask the tough questions with confidence and purpose. And then when you get the answers to those tough questions, you need to listen to understand. You need to write their answer down so you can feed it back to them. I mean, if your intention is to do a needs analysis or an estate planning or a financial analysis of people, you need good, honest information. So some of the questions are, what does your spouse want to have happen when you die? I mean, that seems like a pretty easy question, doesn't it?
Yeah, but let's put it in terms of inflation right now. So take that question about what do you want to have happen for your spouse when you die, but put it in the context of 9% inflation.
Well, let's drill down on that question a little bit more. We think on the surface, what does your spouse want to happen when you die? In other words, what does my wife want to happen when I die, right? That's the question we're asking. But really, if we drill down to that question, if we respond to their answer on that question and try and sell a product, are we really doing our job? And do we really have a clear understanding of what they meant? Did they really understand what we meant when we asked that question? Let me ask a couple of follow-up questions, and then we'll see if the first answer that we got, whatever the answer was in your mind when I said that, what does your spouse want to happen when you die? Like everybody that heard that question probably thought about something. Let me ask a couple of follow-up questions, and then you tell me if what the answer was that you came up in your mind, or the answer in your head that you hear your prospects giving you, if it's the same answer. So here's the follow-up question. No matter what answer they give you, the follow-up questions, well, do this. Tell me everything they want to happen the day you die. And what's great about that question is everything they want to happen is exactly the same thing that's going to happen when you don't die. Because when you die, guess what's going to happen? The car payment is still going to be due. You're going to go out to the mailbox and the car payment's still going to be due. The house payment's still going to be due. The utilities are still going to be due. Your kid's going to call from college and still need money to pay for the college. Life's going to go on. And when they stutter to answer that question, which they will, just like most of you that heard that follow-up question, most of you had the deer caught in the headlight look on your face because you weren't sure exactly how to answer that. The next follow-up question is, well, what do you think will happen? Like the day you die, over the next 72 hours, walk me through what you think is going to happen, just on a day-to-day basis, getting up in the morning, making breakfast, making lunch, going to work, paying the bills, just day-to-day, what's going to happen? And let them emotionally walk through that experience. Because the follow-up question to that is, what do you want to happen? What do you want to happen? Like, I know what I want to have happen.
Now, is this applicable to all types of insurance, including annuities?
I don't know what kind of agent or advisor you are, but if you are an advisor who does needs-based selling, then I guess the answer to your question would be it should be applicable to everything. Like if I'm a financial advisor, if I'm really, like what we talked about last week, a product salesperson versus a financial advisor, if I'm a financial advisor, then they should be able to do what I was about to say I want to happen. And that's for my wife to go in the file cabinet over here, pull the folder out, and everything's spelled out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, absolutely everything that she needs to know and do is already spelled out.
Well, so what we want to talk about is how to use the current media attention on inflation as a door opener, as a way to develop. So what would an agent say? So let's say if an agent's selling annuities, to me right now, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but in my perspective, the topic of inflation, so we have several months now of inflation. Now we're talking about, are we in recession? Are we going into recession? Obviously, people want to talk about that, and especially if they recognize you as a financial advisor, they would say, okay, well, you're in the midst of this thing. What should I do? Or what are your thoughts? But the first thing that comes to mind for me is all of the indexed products, whether it's indexed annuities or indexed life insurance, or even CPI connected or indexed benefits, is the reset provision. People are watching their portfolios lose money. Stock portfolios lose money. Bond portfolios lose money. Real estate investment trusts losing money, losing value. And they're, where do I put money? And I said, well, don't put it in cash because the money's being devalued. It's not worth as much. Where the hell do I put it? It seems to me that you asked the question, what are your thoughts on how inflation is affecting your retirement savings, or your savings in general, or your lifestyle? Get them talking about that, and just say, well, they might ask you even before you say it. They say, well, what should I be doing? Well, for me, what I've done is I put my money into contracts that can't lose money. They never lose money, but they're tracking any increase in the stock market. So that increase is year to year. So even if it goes down 40% next year, if it goes up 10%, I can catch some of that 10%. Whereas if you're in the market, you're only going to get 10% of your loss back. I have my money in a product that gives me a 10% gain, not 10% of my losses, 10% of the gain, and I can never lose that money. To me, that's the starter. That's the conversation you want to have first. How do you feel about it, and how is inflation affecting you? How do you think it's going to affect your retirement or your savings? And then whether they ask you or you tell them, well, this is the only thing I can see to resolve this problem, is putting your money somewhere where you can't lose it, and putting your money somewhere where it's going to guarantee to gain if the market goes up.
Yeah, I mean, what I hear you saying is taking them on that journey, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole point of the questions, right? Is to say, well, how do you mentioned emotion. How do you feel about inflation? How do you feel about losing money in the market? How do you feel about your savings being diminished? How do you feel about your lifestyle changing? How do you feel about maybe living longer, maybe living to your 90 or 100? How do you feel about where your money's going to come from? Let them answer the questions.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the great thing about taking them on that journey, is it has to be their journey, not our journey.
Yeah.
And there's an old saying in sales, to illustrate, you demonstrate. So for example, here's the journey. Wait,
You're bringing something up on the screen?
I was trying to bring up something on the screen, but apparently I put it in the wrong place. I put it in the wrong place. That's a video clip. Let me try and do this. Let me try. It only take a quick second. And I set it up so dramatically.
Yes, you did.
That's the journey, right?
Yeah.
So if you can take people on this journey, here's what we've done in the last year and a half, right?
Yeah.
This is January to June 22nd. That's the journey. Tell me what this journey is going to look like in 20 years when you're facing retirement. That's the journey to talk about, right?
Well,
if this exact thing happens, like you retire, let's say you retire 20 years from now, and in the first 10 years of your retirement, this is what it looked like. The first year of your retirement, this is what it looked like. What would you want to do different?
Well, that's a great point, Lloyd. Think about this. Think about how many times we've talked to, I consult with agents and advisors all the time. And, they'll say that I met with somebody and they have an investment advisor and, they're making lots of money and they're happy with that. And they're not interested in any sort of annuity or life insurance that pays a measly 4, 5, 6, 7%. They want to get outsized returns. How about going back to every single one of those people and saying, oh yeah, how's your strategy working now? Now, would you like something that's guaranteed not to lose money? How do you feel about using that chart? Put that chart up again.
Oh. All right, hang on a second.
All right, well, that's all right. The point is, you take them on that journey, but you say, well, here's where you are. And particularly if you're already retired, if you've got somebody who's already retired and has maybe blown you off, now you go back to them and say, hey, I was just curious, what have you done with your portfolio over the last year and a half that the inflation has done this and stocks have done this? And how are you feeling about that? Has that, and if the guy comes back and says, it didn't affect me, I'm up 30% on the year. Okay, that's fine. I don't know how you're doing it because according to all the experts, that's not what's happening in the market. But if that's what's happening for you, okay. But for most people who are saying, I'm retired, I'm pulling money out of my IRA, my 401k, or my stock portfolio, my real estate, or whatever, it's affecting them. And you say, okay, how do you feel about that? And if they say, I feel bad, I'm scared, I'm nervous, because if it keeps going down, I'm going to have to go back to work, or I don't know, I've got to cut back on my lifestyle. And that's when you say, well, would you like something that stops the bleeding? Use ordinary language. Talk to people like they're your next door neighbor.
Yeah, truthfully, if the guy says that he's up 30%, sometimes, I know this is going to sound harsh, sometimes prospects only lie when they move their lips.
Yeah, well, that's true.
But we can challenge what people say. So, for example, if somebody told me that, here's the questions I would go back. Now, you're up 30% and pork went up 13%. So is that 13% come out of that 30% you're up? Milk's up 15%. Does the extra price in milk come out of what you're up?
Right.
Your hamburger buns were up 16%. Chicken breast over the July 4th weekend was up 33%.
Yeah.
Ground beef was up 36%. Here's what I struggle with. You're up 30% and you're spending what you're up on day-to-day living. Is that what your plan is? To spend your gain on day-to-day living? And if you spend your gain on day-to-day living, what's your gain going to be after you pay for your day-to-day living? And is that the only plan that you have? Those are the kind of conversations that we have. That's the kind of hard questions to ask because it's just common sense. I know if common sense was common, more people would have it, but it's just common sense. And truthfully, if you're talking to somebody that the day-to-day expenses don't bother them, then you're talking to them about the wrong thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Then yes, that's a good point. So
you can't be afraid to lose something. The hardest lesson for salespeople to learn is you can't lose something you don't have.
Right. And so what Lloyd's saying is that you may be dealing with, if you talk to a prospect who says, I'm not concerned about inflation, it doesn't affect me, then they're wealthier. They're not worried because they could lose 50, 60, 70% of their income and it's not going to affect, or their assets, and it's not going to affect their income. Or that they're in that very elite 1% who's playing by a different set of rules. So if you're dealing with high net worth individuals, that top 1%, then what Lloyd and I are talking about here is you shouldn't even be on this show because we're not talking to you.
Yeah, and don't take offense where offense isn't meant, but if you're on the show, you're not dealing with people bringing in $100 million a year.
Exactly.
That's just not the truth. But if somebody said to me, because again, you can't lose something you don't have. It's like the prospect that says, "Oh, you can't beat my plan." Okay, well, get it out and let's see. I'm not going to try and convince him I can beat his plan. I'm going to pick the gauntlet up and say, "Okay, well, get your policy out and let's see."
Yeah.
Yeah. If they say no, I'm not worried about the market. I'm not worried about inflation. It doesn't really hurt me. That's great. You're fortunate to be in that position. Let me ask you a question. In your family, who is being hurt?
Yeah, that's a good question. But that's what I'm saying is for all of you out there that are listening to us today, what Lloyd's trying to say is this is the Socratic method. This is what Socrates developed, what he was well known for, is asking questions. It's having a nimble mind and being so confident in what your objective is, and your objective is to help this person. being so confident in your ability to help them that the questions just come out. You don't have to stop and think, oh, what should I say next? Or have a script. If you are authentically and sincerely there to help somebody, and you understand economics and financial implications and the products the solutions that you have, the questions just come out. And one question leads to another question, and you get deeper and deeper until somebody says, how do I do this? What's your suggestion? And now, as Lloyd has pointed out, then you're in the catbird seat, as they say. That's the premium position, is when they start saying to you, don't present something to me. I'm asking for a solution. You tell me what to do, right? But you got to ask questions. You got to be comfortable in asking those questions and confident that you can respond to those questions.
But let's talk about the elephant in the room, though. If you've been with a prospect more than 15 minutes and they say that to you, why are you with that prospect? I mean, why didn't you flesh that out in the beginning? If I'm sitting with a prospect for 45 minutes or 30 minutes and they start going on about they're not worried about inflation, it doesn't really hurt them, I did a really poor job of pre-qualifying my prospect before I got
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Why would I get involved with a conversation with someone who hasn't owned up that they have a problem? But, just equate it to day-to-day life. Okay, when my kids were growing up, here's what I didn't do. Maybe some of you did this. If you did, it's an unusual parenting method. I probably wouldn't have done it, but maybe it's okay to do it. But if they brought an F home, they never did. Well, my one son did. But if they brought an F home, I didn't take their F and put it on the refrigerator. I didn't call my sisters and say, hey, I just want you to know that Michael got an F in science today. Isn't that great? When people came over, I didn't walk them to the kitchen and proudly stand in front of the refrigerator and say, hey, look at the F he got. I didn't do that. And we can't expect that our prospects are going to put their Fs out there for us. But I do think what we do as good parents is if I know one of my kids has a homework assignment for school the next day, and it doesn't seem reasonable to me based on the time they got home from school, the after-school activity they had, what they did after dinner, that they've got their homework done, I'm probably not going to get in a fight with them about whether they did their homework or not. I'm probably going to say, bring your homework down. I just want to see what you had to get done today. And put them in a position where they have to say something. That's what we want to do with the prospects. I just want to put you in a position where you have to say something. We don't generally, not all the time, but generally we don't lie to our doctor.
Yeah.
Generally when we go into the doctor's office and the nurse asks us the questions, not only do we tell the truth to the nurse, most of us embellish it. It's not that, my back was kind of hurting. It's like, oh my God, I could barely get out of bed. I mean, that's what people normally do.
Yeah.
So I think the principle's the same. If somebody said, inflation doesn't bother me. Okay, is your wife here? Because that's the one I'm going to ask. When you go to the grocery store, it's like that time I was with the manager, and we were sitting at a kitchen table. And I won't tell you the whole background story on him, but I was there to decide if we were going to keep him as a manager. And he did a presentation, the last presentation of the day. He had made one sale, and he gives the husband the price, and the husband says, well, we want to try it out before we buy it. And I looked at the wife, because it's such a stupid comment. It's health insurance. Such a stupid comment. I looked at the wife and I said, well, Betty, let me ask you a question. When you go to the grocery store and you get the basket and you go up and down the aisles and you put the food in the basket, when you get up to the register and they ring your food up, you don't tell the lady at the grocery store, we're going to go home and try the food and then come back and pay for it, right? And she looked at me for a second, turned around, looked at her husband and said, that's right, write him a check. Because it was just too much of a stupid question for me to even call him a liar.
Yeah.
But I was able to give an analogy and let his wife basically tell him, you're an idiot, write a check.
Yeah.
So people say stuff to us that's just so obviously.
Well, yeah, and I don't think we should be talking about the outlier. The outlier is somebody who is either lying to you or is legitimately not affected by inflation.
But you should set it up properly.
Yeah.
Just set up all your appointments properly.
Well, that's the point, is asking questions. So whether you pick up the phone and you call somebody that you know or at least have an acquaintance with, and you start the conversation with, hi, this is Dan. You may recall we've worked together in the past. So they may say, oh yeah, hi Dan, how you doing? Listen, I've just been talking with a lot of my clients lately about inflation and the CPI index, and it came out at 9.1% today, and they're talking about recession. And I was just wondering, how's that affecting you? Stop. Let them respond. So now you're using a media topic that everybody is talking about. It's on the news. It's in the papers. It's on YouTube. It's on all social media. So if you broach that subject, they're going to have an opinion. And so now you respond to that opinion. Be prepared for what they're going to say. They may say, yeah, I have no idea, and you can push it a little bit and say, well, do you think we're in a recession already? Well, I don't know. How do you define recession? Well, the recession is usually when the economy is contracting. Do you think the economy is contracting? Well, how's it affecting your business? How's it affecting your profession? You ask those questions, and you just get the guy talking until he gets engaged.
I mean, you ask them questions. Ask them questions that you ask. So here's a simple question. Are you spending more for groceries this month than you spent last month?
Yeah.
I mean, if the answer is yes, is that what you were expecting to do? No. Okay. But like in the news, I'm not talking politics here, so whatever your politics is, Biden went over to the Middle East, right? Somebody asked him about gas prices. And he said the CPI numbers weren't right because gas prices, went down, whatever it was, 20 cents or 30 cents or 40 cents in the last 2 weeks of June, right? So CPI is not accurate. And I thought, the question nobody asked him, so you're okay with $4.39 a gallon for gas instead of $4.89 a gallon for gas? I mean, to me, that's the simplest question. Don't get in an argument over 40 cents. Get in an argument over lifestyle.
Right.
So you're okay with that. That's what. So the question: are you spending more than you wanted or more than you expected?
Well, and here's the corollary to this is what we're saying. How does that develop? How does that conversation develop into a sales opportunity? And this is the pivot point. How do you take that response? Yeah, I'm concerned. Our budget's being hit. And again, is this somebody in their 30s and 40s? Is it somebody in their 50s or 60s that hasn't retired yet? Or is it somebody who's retired? Those are all different situations. But you let them tell you, how is it affecting you? And we say, well, what do you mean, how is it affecting you? How is it affecting your life? Has it affected your lifestyle? Has it affected your monthly budget? Yes or no? Or has it affected your savings? Has it affected your retirement account? Has it affected your income? Those are things. Are you concerned about that? Get them talking about it. And then based on that concern, you got to ask about their saving. We're talking about money here. You're the money guy. So we're talking about money. How is this recession? How is this inflation? How is it affecting your money? Think of the questions you want. How is it affecting your money? They come back and they say, well, I looked at my 401k statement and I'm down $200,000. How do you feel about that? Right? You always go back to the feeling question. How do you feel about that? Well, I'm irate, I'm scared, I'm nervous, whatever it might be. Now you're into a sales opportunity.
Let me extrapolate on that. If they say I'm scared, I'm frustrated, I'm worried about it, now you dig them deeper in the hole. Now you take them, and how old did you say you were? 54 years old. So now you're 68 years old, and you just found out you lost $200,000. Do you feel different about it at 68 than you do at 54?
That's a great question.
And the reason it's a great question is because at 54, you've got time to make it up.
Yeah.
At 68, you don't have time to make it up. And when they say whatever they're going to say, well, what plans do you have to prevent that from happening or reducing the opportunity for that to happen? And let them start selling you on one or two things. Either they don't have a plan or they're looking for a plan. Too often, and you see this after product training. As soon as an advisor gets done with product training, they run out. I mean, the only way they can be valuable, the only way they look in the mirror and say, I'm really an important person, I'm really a valuable, smart person, is if they have somebody they can regurgitate their knowledge to. So they look for a prospect they can regurgitate their knowledge to. And that's a mistake, because what we should be doing is getting the prospect to regurgitate their fears to us. We should almost be like their couch therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens with a therapist in a therapy situation is a therapist asks you, well, what would happen if you did this?
Mm-hmm.
And then you talk about what would happen if you're trying to diet. Well, what would happen if you did? What would happen if you bought your vegetables and your fruit, and then each morning you cut up the food you were going to have for the day, and you put it in individual containers, and then put the time that you're going to eat it on it, and stuck it in the refrigerator, and then on those time, what would happen if you did that? And then the patient sits there and talks through that process. That's what we are. We're the therapist.
Mm-hmm.
We have to help people talk through and walk through that process. That's why that chart that I showed you earlier is such a great chart. That's the journey.
Yeah.
This was actually on TV yesterday.
Yeah.
And you see, I cut it off so it doesn't have the TV station, so people can't say, oh, well, you're left or you're right or whatever. I just thought this was such a great chart. And it does exactly, if I can bore you with this, it does exactly what you should do. Biden's inauguration. Doesn't say Biden's a good or bad president. Doesn't say you should or shouldn't voted for him. It just states a fact. Biden's inauguration. Inflation rate 1.4%. March 21st, Biden signs 1.9 trillion COVID relief bill. Doesn't say he should have signed it or he shouldn't have signed it. We don't need to offer our personal opinion about the choices our prospects are making. So if you just look at what was said here, you see this. You see the pivot points here of when things change. So imagine you're having a conversation with people, and you take notes, and then you circle those pivot points, and then you go back like you just said, and ask them that question. You lost $200,000. How do you feel about that? I feel frustrated. Write that down. I feel irritated. Write that down. I feel nervous. Write that down. Then when you take them to age 75, you say, well, let me ask you a question. Earlier you said, now the only way you can feed them their words back. Earlier you said you felt frustrated, you felt scared, you felt nervous. The only way you could feed those words back to them is if you did two things. You listened to understand, and you actually wrote the damn words down. So now you're able to say, earlier you said, at 74, tell me how you think you're going to feel about that. That's the challenge.
Yeah. Let me give you two scenarios, and you kind of alluded to them. So let's say you have somebody who's 50, and let's say they've done very well in socking away $500,000 in their 401k. And they've lost 20%, maybe their funds or whatever. But in general, the S&P is down about 20%, I think, today, maybe a little bit more. And so out of the 500,000, they're down to 400,000. In addition, we have a rate of inflation of 9% this month, and it looks like it's continuing to go up. The stock market doesn't look like it's rebounding at this point. It may go down some more. Inflation may go up some more. It may flatten out. We don't know, but inflation is here right now. And you ask them, what do you think it's going to do? It's just like taxes. You think taxes are going to be higher in the future or lower, right? Let you tell me. And they almost always say, well, they'll probably be higher. Okay, do you think inflation is going to continue, or do you think it's going to stop? Do you think it's going to go up, or do you think it's going to stay the same? Do you think that the stock market is going to rally and you're going to get back that 100,000 by the end of the year? Or do you think that it may go down some more? Those are the questions to ask. Now, when you get all three of those things going on, taxes, inflation, stock devaluations or stock market contracting, and you say, how do all the three of those things make you feel? And then my question to you is, if I'm 50 years old and you're my advisor, and I say, well, or you tell me, well, you've got time, stay in the market. You've got time to make up that loss. You've got time to make up those losses. what do you tell that person as opposed to the person who's 68 and already in retirement, who lost the same 20% in the stock market? You can't tell him, well, just hang in there, you have time to make it up. And no, I don't have time to make it up. That was money I was spending right now. So you got two different scenarios. As an advisor, what do you tell the 54-year-old that is different than the 68-year-old?
Well, we discussed this. Part of my answer, we discussed this the other week. So the 54-year-old, I'm going to ask that question: of the money you have left, how much do you not want to risk anymore? So that you can put the rest of your money in the market or keep it in the market to try and pick up those losses that you had and pick up the gain more confidently. And then I'm going to show them how to carve out that particular amount of money. And then, one of the things I heard on a financial talk show today, they were talking about the market being down, and this one person was advocating now's the time to buy these stocks.
Right.
Because Apple's up, Google's up, Facebook is up, the blue chip stocks are up. The market's down, but the blue chip stocks are up. So he was talking about now's a good time to buy that. So for that 50-year-old, I might actually separate it like that, reposition some of that money into a fixed product like an annuity, and then look at that other money to see how they can do it. If we go over to the 68-year-old, my first reaction to your question about that 68-year-old is, let's talk about what you're living on.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what your bills are, what your income is, and where that income is coming from, and how long that income needs to sustain you, and if you have a spouse, how long the income that's coming from your assets needs to sustain your wife. Because you could do some stuff and stop the bleed, do some stuff, but if you do it in a way that depletes the assets in order to fix an immediate temporary situation, you create a bigger problem down the road when he passes away and there's nothing left for the wife to live off of. So that's kind of a that's kind of a different animal. In that case, maybe we do some stuff to help create some income if they've got an income gap. If they've got a home that's completely paid for, maybe we do a reverse mortgage. I mean, there are some options you have for them, but I do think the advice is predicated on not only where they're currently at, but I always think you have to look 10 years ahead.
Yeah.
And if you don't look 10 years ahead, when they wake up 10 years from now and the solution you have in place today isn't applicable to their situation 10 years from now, you may not even be in their life for them to blame, but they're the ones going to live the consequences of it.
Yeah. So those are good answers. My question was more to countermand what conventional investment advice is being given. And the conventional investment advice is just that. Well, you're 54 years old, you have enough time to make it up, right? And so I would tell that person, do you ever make it up? What about the 5 years it takes to recapture after a market crash, which is the average? In those 5 years, you may recapture what you lost, but you lost all the money you would have gained during those 5 years. You never catch up. It's like somebody saying, oh, I only sleep 4 hours on weekdays and then I catch up on the weekends. And every doctor will tell you, you cannot catch up on your sleep. Right. That's not the way it works. So it's same thing in the market. And, you and I have been very unabashed, and me more so than you, about coming down on Wall Street. I really, and even for those of you out there who are collecting assets under management, and you're not the manager, you're only turning it over to managed funds. So you're getting your little piece, and the money manager's getting their piece, and the administrator's getting their piece. I was listening to Ray Dalio. I think everybody knows Ray Dalio, one of the biggest fund investors in the world, and he's retired now. But he's been talking a lot about the macroeconomics and inflation and monetary devaluation. And one of the things he said as an aside was that the markets are really designed to make money for the smart people at the loss of the dumb people. He says it's a zero-sum game. It's a zero-sum game. Wall Street and investments, it's a zero-sum game. Somebody wins and somebody loses. The smart guys win and the rest of the people lose. And he said that's the way it works. Now, Ray Dalio, who's at the top of that food chain, comes right out, and I mean, he's no longer dependent on that. He's retired, but he's telling the truth. And what I think we need to do as financial advisors in the insurance industry is we need to push back. And I know I've said this before, but when you use a topic like the CPI and the rate of inflation, don't back down. That is not a small issue. If you project, I did this projection a little while ago, from 2000 to 2020, the rate of inflation was about 2.85% on average over that period of time. But it devalued, in the aggregate, it devalued the dollar by over 50%. I think it was 51, 52%, which meant that if you were a postal worker, or you were a fireman or a policeman or anybody who had a pension, and your pension was not adjusted for inflation, the money that, or if you just had even an annuity, if you had something that was fixed income, what you were getting in 2000 was only buying, in 2020, was only buying half as much goods. Inflation is not a small thing. That's at the controlled inflation that the Fed wants at 2 or 2.5%. But when it's at 9% or 8% or 7%, or God knows, in some respects it's much higher, you are losing your spending power of those dollars. You need to protect that, and you can't just say, "Oh, just put your money into a fund and let it ride," because that's what Wall Street's telling you. Why? Because it benefits them. They make money, not you. And I think we need to be more adamant, more advocative about the value of protecting your savings and protecting against the government and protecting against devaluation and protecting it against market volatility. Protect your money. Go back to the old days. I'm really dating myself now. But the old adage was, don't tell me, I'm not so concerned about how much I'm going to get back on my money. I'm more concerned about, am I going to get my money back, right? And people used to put in coffee cans and mattresses back in the Depression because they couldn't trust the banks. Well, and Henry Ford said that. He goes, if people understood how the banking system works, there'd be a rebellion in this country tomorrow. Wake up, people. You people, if you advisors are not aware of the seriousness of our economic dilemma globally, but particularly in the United States, then you are doing your people a disservice. And ultimately, you're going to pay the price because there's not going to be anybody out there to buy your products.
Well, I'm not as smart as some of these people we're talking about. I don't profess to be as smart, but I do like to go see what the smart people say.
Yeah.
So let's have a look at what a really smart guy said. And this smart guy is a guy named Warren Buffett. And I wrote an article in 2012 in Insurance News Net magazine. And I was talking about, at that time, Warren Buffett released his recent shareholder letter. I don't know if you can read it. Here it is right here. And here's what he said. This is my article. And the reason I wrote this article is because one of the things Warren Buffett talked about is how you should put some of your clients' money in annuities. And I want to read you the two things that I quoted him on. Warren Buffett in his most recent shareholder letter defined investing. So this is Warren Buffett defining investing as the transfer to others of purchasing power now with a reasoned expectation of receiving more purchasing power after taxes have been paid on nominal gains in the future. I thought that was really good.
Yeah, that's very good.
Now, I said in the article, annuities are not an investment. However, what they do is ensure your client's ability to have power to purchase in their later years and to pay taxes on this future income in a way that fits their then current economic situation based on their tax rate and lifestyle. Now, here's what Warren Buffett said about that. I'm just quoting what he said. In the same article, Mr. Buffett more succinctly defines the investment philosophy at Berkshire Hathaway. So this is Warren Buffett's investment philosophy, not mine, not Dan's, Warren Buffett. If you don't believe in this, go argue with Warren Buffett. Don't send me any nasty emails. This isn't me. But Warren Buffett said, foregoing, and you should write this down, foregoing consumption now in order to have the ability to consume more at a later date.
Yeah.
That is his investment philosophy.
Right.
And so that's everything from my opinion. If you ask my opinion about what we should be advising people on, that's it.
That's good.
Yeah. So we've got 9.1% inflation right now, right? It's a CPI. And according to Warren Buffett, you would slow your consumption down so you have more for later.
Right.
I mean, if you want to know what to do about the bad economy right now, besides vote, don't vote the same morons in office that are passing the same policies that are creating the problem, regardless of what your politics are. But if you want to know what to do about it, have a good financial plan in place. We started this conversation off by asking the question, what does your wife want to have happen on the day you die? What do you think she's going to want to do the day you die? And I said, what do I want my wife to do? I want her to come down and take the file out of that file cabinet over there because everything's spelled out. I want her to actually have a plan of what to do. And the reason that's critical is because she's part of the plan. And when you're talking to your clients, when you're talking to your prospects, the family unit is your prospect. Mm-hmm. That's the people that you are taking care of. You're taking care of the father, the mother, the husband, the wife. You're taking care of the siblings, the grandkids. That's who you're taking care of. And you have a responsibility to frame your questions in a way that illustrates and demonstrates the impact of the decisions they're going to make today on all those people. And one of the reasons, and I know some of you right now on this call think, well, I don't care about that. I won't even be around by then. But I'm going to tell you something. They're going to pull that document out. They're going to pull that policy out or those stocks out, whatever it is, they're going to pull that out. And if there's a problem and the money's been lost or the money's not there, they're going to see your name and your number and you're going to get that phone call. And we don't have to get that kind of phone call because we can do the kind of job that means when we ask people the question, what do you want her to do? What do you want her to do on the day you die? We have a very reasonable question, reasonable answer for them. And I like what Warren Buffett said about what the purpose is of investing. He breaks, and if you think about what Warren Buffett said about investing, we do the same thing. I know this sounds really weird, but we do the same thing at the movie theater, right? You go to the movie, my wife and I go to the movies. It costs us like $18 for the tickets. Outrageous. I remember in Chattanooga, Tennessee as a kid, my mom used to give me a quarter and Carrie Kroger and I would take the bus to Chattanooga. We would watch the movie, get popcorn, a drink, and take the bus back home for the quarter. I mean, talk about dating myself.
Yeah.
We buy we don't just buy a popcorn. We buy the popcorn and we buy the drink. But my wife and I never buy the candy because we stop at the store and we buy candy and put it in her purse. I get Raisinets, she gets the Snow Caps, and we pull that out and eat that at the movie theater, right? You do the exact thing day to day that Warren Buffett's talking about doing, but now the CPI is 9.1%. Here's the question for you. All this will get resolved. It'll take a few years to do it. It'll get resolved. But the next time this happens, then what are you going to do? That's the question every advisor needs to be asking people. And particularly that moron, that said, I'm not worried about inflation. Well, let me ask you this. What does inflation have to get to for you to be worried about it?
Yeah, well, I think the point was really either they're so wealthy that they're playing by a different set of rules than the rest of us. And that's my point. So as Dalio said, he's one of the smart guys that's stealing the money or taking the money. He's not stealing, but taking the money from the dumb ones. So he doesn't worry about it because there's always dumb people and the system is rigged in his favor. So I don't care. I make money. I have friends. I have friends like that. That we was sitting at a Super Bowl party this year, and these guys are on their phone and they're making money. Well, they're on, and these guys are they're in hedge funds, but there is we got into oil contracts and we're doing this, and everybody's complaining about the price of gasoline. These guys going, I love it. Make that gas go up to $15. I'm making money on it. And that's the way those people think. They're playing by a different set of rules. So those aren't the people we're talking to. We're talking about real people, and real people, it constitute, business owners that are making 2, 3, 4 executives that are making $400,000 or $500,000 a year. They're affected. Just as we've always known, we know the same thing. Your expenses tend to rise to the level of your income, and even people who are making a lot of money tend to spend it all, and so they have the impact of inflation and recession and other economic issues, and certainly devaluation of the dollar affect them just as much. So when you talk to them, I think when we're talking about insurance and annuities, we're always looking for the source of funds. We're always like, okay, how are we going to fund this? And of course, the first thing when it's life insurance, if you're asking somebody to put $20,000 into a life insurance policy for tax-free retirement, and they just say, well, I don't have an extra $20,000. I don't have it. It's a great idea. I'd love to do it. Don't have money. So you got to find the money. That's the same thing with the annuity, guys. Well, I got $500,000 in my IRA, but it's all in mutual funds and real estate investment trusts, whatever. I don't have any money to put into annuity. So you may get discouraged. You may walk out. Now, really good annuity advisors will say, okay, like you've said before, I don't want the whole $500,000. And that's a sort of bad verbiage on my part. It's not that I want it, but salespeople think, well, I just want this share of business that I can get a commission on. Now, what you want to say is, you don't need to put the whole $500,000 into a safe money contract, but maybe you want to put 30, 40, 50, 60% of your $500,000 into a safe money contract. And I use the term safe money contract. I don't call it annuities. I don't call it life insurance. I always call it a safe money contract because it's safe money. You have investments, that's not safe money. I have safe money contracts. So you ask for, this is how much I want. But if they say that, I'm earning 10, 15% of my portfolio, say, are you really? Let me take a look at your, do you know how much you've put in and how much you've earned over the years? I mean, most people don't keep track of that. And not a lot of 401k statements that I've looked at, you have to request that. You have to request, okay, what's my sequence of deposits and my sequence of returns? But when I have run those, every time, there's not one exception. And there's if you haven't used this, MoneyChimp has great financial calculators for you can calculate a sequence of earnings or a sequence of deposits and get a future value or present value on future interest, all of those things. So moneychimp.com. But anyway, every time I've done that, I've come back to him. I said, okay, well, your real that's the word I'm looking for. Your real average compound annual growth rate is never what they think it is. It's always much lower. And then I tell them, now deduct for the average rate of inflation over these 20 years or 15 years or whatever. Now deduct the fees that you're paying your advisor or the money manager for managing that. And you know what it comes down to? About the same rate they would have gotten on an annuity without the risk. And so that's what I'm saying is this is a I wouldn't say it's a scam, but Wall Street has definitely constructed an agenda. They've definitely accepted something that we all accept, in that where do you put your savings? Oh, you put it in the stock market. You put it in the market. Nobody questions it anymore. Should be questioning it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just take your example there. Take the concept of dollar cost averaging, right? That's the theory that depositing money into a fund in a periodic manner will result in a lower average per share cost. in an up and down market like we have right now. But here's the problem with that for seniors. Pulling money out of a fund has the opposite effect.
Right. Yeah.
So, this is great advice. I say all the time, every prospect is right for the right product, but
Yeah.
not every product is right for every prospect.
Yeah.
So, there's nothing wrong with the market. I go back to the question that you hear me use all the time, and that is, of the money you have left, how much do you not want to risk anymore? It's such a safe, easy question to ask, and I've never, and I probably started asking that question back in 2001, and I'll bet I haven't had 10 people not give me a number. And they always give you a number, and whatever that number is, that's the number to start with. But the problem for seniors, I mean, because that's where you're going to take people to. I mean, that's where people are really going to reap the rewards or the consequences of working with you. The problem with seniors is they have to take money out to live.
Right.
And if what you have set up for them isn't structured for that, then they're going to suffer.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I've been reading lately. I mean, I grew up for 50 years. 4%, you get your portfolio. When you're ready to retire, you assume you take out 4%. It's going to be a combination of growth, growth on your portfolio or dividends or interest or whatever, and maybe some principal, and that will last you 4%. And now, what I've been reading in the last year is nobody's using the 4% anymore. So they were saying all along, this is the way to do it. Now they're saying, no, that's not the way to do it. So why isn't that the way to do it anymore?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, they're saying 3% now because people have lost so much money in the market. If they take 4% out, they'll deplete their money.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I like to work backwards. That's why I always talk about that lifestyle issue. Let's
Yeah.
figure out what your monthly budget's going to be.
Yeah.
Do that on an annual basis, take it over your life expectancy, and that's the amount to start with. It's kind of like long-term care insurance. The long-term care insurance I like is the pool. I don't like the $300 a day one or $500 a day one or $150 a day one. I like the one that gives you a pool of money.
Yeah.
And you can split that pool of money with your spouse. So if I need long-term care, which the average person I think is in the hospital for less than 27 days the last time I looked at it.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. And the longest period of time is 18 months.
Right.
But you get a 3-year long-term care policy with a pool of money, and then I die after 17 days, then the balance of that pool goes to my spouse.
Yeah.
I'm not stuck with $150 a day or $300 a day or stuff like that. And I think that the idea of looking at retirement in that way is pretty safe. Again, I go back to what Warren Buffett said in here, which to me is just common sense. I know if common sense was common, more people would have it. Foregoing consumption now in order to have the ability to consume more at a later date. You want to know what to do about inflation? I mean, it's kind of unfortunate to say that right now, but when the government tells you, hey, gas is down 30%, so just be happy spending twice as much as last year, that's probably not where you want to go to get your answers.
Yeah. All right. Well, our time is up, so let's wrap it up.
Yeah, I would like for you guys to put your comments in there. Let us know what you think about this idea, what we're talking about. The inflation is 9.1%. So how are you impacted? Just type a message in whatever medium you're looking at this, and just tell us how's it impacted you, and we'll read some of those back next week. So remember, your prospects only see what you see when you look in the mirror. You're a highly trained, licensed professional, so be that. All right, Dan, I'll talk to you next week.
All right, it's fine.